Welcome to Insane Ambition, a business and tech show breaking down lessons and playbooks from the world's most ambitious founders, investors, researchers, and changemakers. For sure. But yeah, we're not here to talk about us, we're here to talk about you, right?
Sure, we can speak a bit about you too, that's fine.
So we'll just kick it off, but Eldin, like what are you working on at the moment? I know that you're in kind of the MedTech space, Biotech space, so maybe you can tell us a little bit about, is it Diagnose? Is that how you say it?
Yes, it's diagnose.io. Yep. So basically what we say is we use AI and protein signatures to help respiratory patients find the right treatment faster so they can breathe better and live longer. That's just a tagline. And then philosophically, I can explain that a bit. It might take a bit more longer time.
Beautiful. Philosophical was the way to go.
Maybe we'll go comic first, right? Like,
sounds good.
When I saw the name, it kind of reminded me of something like ChatGPT would just pump out, because it's like, oh, play on words.
But this is pre-ChatGPT.
No, I know. But I'm saying like the diagnose, and I was like, oh, that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So how did that resonate with the investors at the beginning? Did they like the name?
Yeah, no, I actually find it quite, it's quite memorable. It's pretty funny. We had a lot of comments on this because our focus evolved from just nasal-based disorders to, the whole respiratory system over time. And my co-founders are ear, nose and throat surgeons, 20, 30 years plus of experience in the space. And we were at this program at Stanford, similar to like a hackathon, but it was a bit longer than that. And by the end of it, we did a bit of a brainstorm about how we name our team, right? And it was a diagnostic tool around nasal disorders, rhinology. So we thought Diagnose was, one of my co-founders, pretty funny. So that was one of his ideas. The other one that he had, I personally like, but I think it would have left a bad taste in investors' mouth, was Theranos.
Maybe we'll just skip that one.
And we laughed about it for a while, and it was hilarious, but then it was like, nah, nobody would take us seriously. So
you probably wouldn't have ever got funding.
Probably.
I'd be like, probably not. We'll pass on this one.
So that was the story of Diagnose on how we actually got the name. We stuck with it. We're thinking about rebranding probably in the next few years because we're morphing over time into not just diagnostic, but potentially drug discovery, drug development as well. So who knows? Stay tuned. There's a lot of work in the back.
Definitely.
Sounds exciting. So tell us, where did you actually come up with this concept of Diagnose, and what do you think the problem is, just for the viewers that aren't familiar with the condition?
Yep. There's two things here, and it's recognizing that, the problem that we wanted to solve, we've almost like expanded and became more ambitious over time as well as we settle into our roles as founders. That's something that I'm pretty cognizant of talking to other founders in the community. Sometimes, especially from, I think, Australian culture, we tend to look for what's a bit more achievable at first. And then there was always this mix and mash of, different ideals and culture. My American counterparts, where they were always like, we need to dream bigger and, this is the problem on a much bigger scale. So where it all started was I had a scholarship through an entity called Accelerating Australia in Perth. So, prior to that, let's rewind a bit more. So prior to that, I was in Perth, WA, worked with a few medical device companies there, startups mainly, seed, pre-seed sort of stage. One of them was in orthopedics, implants for hip fractures. The other one was a device for children that have ear infections to be able. So think about it as an alternative to ear tubes, surgical procedures, and interacting with them. And one of them was a project that was a collaboration between Stanford and Curtin University, right? So had good relationship with them, and so through that entity, Accelerating Australia, and Kevin Fleger, who was in charge of that, I was very lucky, very fortunate, owed a lot to them to get a scholarship to go to Stanford and go through this short version of this program that they have called Biodesign, specific on ear, nose and throat disorders, right? So that was 2019, just before COVID hit. I spent a few months in the Bay Area, actually. I lived in what you call a hacker house. It was incredible. I was like, I'm never going to live in a hacker house again.
Well, let's break that down at some point. We got to get into that because Ben and I just got back from San Francisco.
Yeah.
And we stayed in a community house, hacker house style thing.
Yeah.
That was
whereabouts?
Near Hayes Valley.
Okay.
So that's I'm not sure.
It's called the Embassy SF.
Fair enough.
And we tried to explain it to people, and they kept thinking that we're staying at the Australian Embassy.
Trust me, it's like we're not that special.
I stayed in Menlo Park for a few months.
Okay.
And I lived in a hacker house there, and even they were so expensive. For like these few months, it was like 10, 20 of us. I don't know how many it was. And it was so expensive still. Anyways, so I spent a bit of time at, going through this biodesign program, and it was predominantly, I was the only Australian there. I was 1 out of 4 engineer, I think, among, 20, 30 cohort. And I was the youngest one by far, probably like multiples of 1.5 to 2, or even 3 sometimes.
Yep.
And most of them were surgeons, ear, nose and throat surgeons, working on some of the biggest problems that they feel is valid in the ENT community. And part of the problem that we were trying to look at back then was, this concept of, when somebody comes in with sinusitis, which is sinus infections, it could be viral, it could be bacterial, and if you give the wrong drug to the, if you give the antibiotics to the viral one, doesn't do anything, they keep having their symptoms, and you can contribute to antibiotic resistance, right? We worked on this for quite a while, and then eventually, on a conceptual level, we evolved a bit more. And this is, sort of what I perceive is one of the biggest skill you can earn as a startup co-founder, is to be able to be seeking the truth all the time. So a lot of people will be giving you feedback. I think this is great. I think this is not great. But to be able to really discern what is the truth out there, because there's only one absolute truth in the world, right? Whether people are telling it to you or whether you come up around it by yourself. So that's your biggest skill, because once you find that truth, you hang on to it no matter what you go through, and eventually you'll come out, successful on the other side. So somebody who speaks about universal truth quite a lot is Peter Thiel. He's read a lot of his books as well, and philosophically he studied under Rene Girard, I think his name was, which is like a Christian philosopher, Stanford professor, that talk about, mimetic desires and so forth. And so Diagnose evolved a bit more since then. But, that's the origin story, pretty
Interesting.
much.
So are you originally from Australia?
No.
So where are you from?
So I'm originally from Mauritius.
Okay.
It's a tiny island, considered third world country, really, off the coast of Madagascar. Do you know where it is?
Yeah. Well, my parents one of my parents' sides are from Seychelles. So it's like similar kind of vibe.
Wow, that's awesome. That's a small world.
Yeah.
What about you?
I've never heard of that before. No.
Just think Africa, Madagascar, little island somewhere in there.
Okay. Are there lemurs there?
I think they are. No, yeah.
What are you talking?
That's where Madagascar is,
Yeah,
right?
no, King Julian.
Yeah, that's
Madagascar,
it.
right? So-
And the animals talk there.
From the TV show.
They talk.
Yes, yeah.
Have you been?
One animal suffered from a debilitating condition such as that, yeah.
Yes. There were several animals that, they did speak.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah, so
So Mauritius, when did you move to wherever?
10 years now. And
To Australia?
Yeah, to Australia. I was 18, and I barely spoke English as well. So I learned English at school, but I didn't speak English. I used to speak because the main language in Mauritius is Creole or French, depending if you're from the more nicer areas. And I used to speak this really Frenchy with this French accent. It's like, hello, how are you? And
my mum speaks Creole, and so do my grandparents.
That's incredible.
Yeah. It's funny, like, this is the second person who I've had some cultural tie to. We had
Because you're very, just diverse. in
yeah, I'd say
background.
so.
Yeah.
Like a mutt. I didn't say that.
You did.
That's incredible, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's rare to meet, islanders from those tiny islands. So,
Yeah, but they do make beautiful people. So,
thank you.
Such as yourself.
Thank you.
What about me? Nah. All right, so Mauritius to Australia, and then all of a sudden, you went to America?
Yep.
What was that like, the cultural difference between Australia and the US at the time where you were there? Because Ben and I have like a perspective on this we could probably share as well. Because it's probably changed a lot over time.
Yeah, probably. Actually, a lot of my friends left Bay Area, San Francisco. A lot of them are going to Austin and different places as well. But fundamentally, it was a bit of a culture shock. Not the same culture shock when you go from Australia to Asia, but more like, wow, the caliber of people, the caliber of thinking, the caliber of community. It's just incredible. And, you know, people bouncing off ideas all the time, people working to solve incredible problems all the time, very happy to share the networks. They don't feel threatened, because I feel, you know, we're a bit more isolated here, right? And if you build a network in a more sparsely populated place, it's somewhat comes into who you are as part of your identity or part of your perceived value. Your network, it's your network, it's nobody else's network, right? And I find that here sometimes, you know, it was slightly more challenging to share networks within some of the other, you know, founders in the ecosystem that I had as well. And in the US, it was incredible. In whether that was in the Hacker Home or Stanford community, it was just everybody just sharing everything, because eventually it's that concept. I was thinking about this the other day. I think it's that concept of what you call it's a positive sum game, right? Is me helping somebody else will never, ever, ever, ever take something away from me. It will make the community better as a whole, and then everybody wins, right? So that was my experience of Bay Area. I won't pretend I know a lot of the US. I've traveled a bit, you know, in Pennsylvania, Texas, where my co-founders live, and spent quite a bit of time in Seattle over the past year. I would say Bay Area by itself and California, San Francisco, it's a bit more different culture than, you know, some of these other cities I've visited too.
How would you define it in terms of like the difference in maybe people and the environment even?
I would say people have a lot more first principles thinking in San Francisco. Like, they really have thought about the world and what doesn't work and what works, and they're very much driven by what is the unfair advantage that they have that they can bring to create more pie, to just create more economic value. Whereas here, we, you know, at least the majority of the population thinks more in terms of what salary can I get to support what kind of family,
safe options,
and what sort of private school can I send my kid to. Like, that's the dream. Whereas at least in SF, the dream is, how can I create like a technology company that will change the world, like Steve Jobs or like Mark Zuckerberg or whatever. Exactly. And so like the scale of the ambition is a lot higher. And you also, as you mentioned, you have this like this freedom of network, this ability to just go there and then instantly be connected to people, so that like the serendipity of each encounter is much higher. And that has this sort of compounding growth curve where you quickly find the group of like 4 or 5 people that think the same way and have the same vision, and you all help each other out because you're all the same high caliber people. Whereas here, firstly, the density of that caliber of talent is lower, but also the pathway to all come together and to start something together is a lot slower. And then the willingness to take risks on that group of people is a lot lower. That's at least what I've identified so far.
Yeah, I agree. 50% agreement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go on.
You go first.
I was just going to say, like, something I can't kind of speak for like the whole kind of area that we went and explored, because we only were there for 7 days. But I noticed that a lot of high caliber people, yes, they have big ideas and ambitions, and yes, they meet people out of serendipity and work on awesome projects. But I almost feel like, this is probably not the best thing to say, but it creates like little echo chambers of like people just, you know, hyping themselves up to work on a project that is either, you know, possible for like a very small percentage of people, but likely, you know, very high probabilistic failure, right? That's just my opinion. It may be wrong, but well, what do you think?
I agree with some of the points that you said around, you know, being a bit more risk averse here, being a bit more laid back, because I think as a country, we're isolated, right? We're just giant island or continent, whatever you want to call it, off very far away from everything else, and we're not under as constant threat from external factors as Israel would have, as America would have, as Japan would have, or South Korea as well would have. So, and cost of living is relatively okay. It's bananas in some places of Australia, of course. Healthcare, single payer system, the healthcare quality of life is a lot better here compared to a lot of countries. So we're very comfortable. And if you're very, very comfortable, why would you do anything else, right? If you live a very comfortable life, you're very happy, why would you strive to push the boundaries? And you need to be able to self-motivate to be able to get to that point, right? And I think we do have a lot of people that are self-motivated, and this is where I disagree with your point. I think we have a lot of talent here, but I think we are very risk-averse and comfortable, and also very individualistic, right? So the way that so a really good mentor of mine, he works for a very famous VC firm in San Francisco. They call KCK Medical. And I was talking to him about it before. I was like, what's so special about Silicon Valley, right? What's so special about San Francisco? And why is there so much money there? And his whole point is quite enlightening, and I didn't look too deep into it. It's been, in my mind to look into this deeper. But his perspective was there needs to be critical mass of talent, and not just talent that want to work together, right? Once you have these two components, geography matters a lot, and once these really talented individuals rally towards a common goal to be able to influence something that has lasting impact, then that attracts a bit more money. And then once they are successful, you have this cycle of talent and money that keeps going on. And we've seen this example with Atlassian and Canva, right? You have a lot of people who are part of the Canva and Atlassian family. They're very proud of it, and it's almost its own bubble, right? And that's this cycle of talent throughout history. His point was throughout history, you always have these talent bubbles, right? During the Renaissance era, it all started from Italy, and you had all these great philosophers, all these great inventors starting around the same geographical area, and then it spread around, but they were known for this. Same for the Industrial Revolution starting in the UK. So, and then Silicon Valley known for, of course, computers and the internet and everything. So I think the problem here is to think, what can we rally all our talent behind towards a global world-changing common good? And for the past, Australia has been historically known for the economy that's been running on, mining and oil and gas and predominantly real estate as well. So, and while these resources are being threatened in the future, what else could we rally about? And how do we bring the best talent of the country? It's not, I'm from New South Wales, you're from Victoria. I see a lot of this like interstate disputes, and everybody's like, the best engineers are in Perth and the others are. But it's how do we bring all the best talent together towards a common goal? And I think potentially, I'm hopeful the National Reconstruction Fund and some of the initiatives the government will do that. Oh, well, who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, I was going to say it's probably driven by the economy and the amount of money that's available. That obviously is a big incentive for people leaving the country, is ideas that are ambitious are too risky. So people are like, all right, see ya. I'll go to the US. I'll talk to someone in a bar and get 200K to go and start a company that doesn't have any tech.
100%. Like the Synchron story, man, makes my heart bleed because they're an incredible company, incredible technology. They competed with Elon Musk and outcompeting him. And it came from Australia, but couldn't find the right resources to grow here. And I think that's just a fallacy. I think we have incredible talents. It's just having that small initial push to be able to nurture that talent and of course, rallying them towards a common goal. That's also very important.
I think that the hope is, well, if we just take a step back, the US has been on a bigger and a longer compounding growth curve, right? It started with Apple and then the PayPal mafia and the Facebook mafia. And at least I was reading today, the hope is that once capital is unlocked from Canva and from Atlassian through their share offerings, that all these early employees who got in and built these companies from the ground up now have access to capital, and they now are freed to work on other projects. So the hope is we can have a Canva mafia and an Atlassian mafia, and we can have these really talented, experienced people that have that San Francisco mindset and ambition, but we now also have the capital, and they become angel investors, and they become co-founders of the next wave of Australian startups. That's exciting.
It is.
But at the same time, the compounding growth curve is still accelerating in the US.
Yes.
And so there's a fear that maybe we'll never catch up, maybe we'll always be 5 to 10 years behind, and that, startup hubs just grow, like they never collapse. That you might have hubs, form in Sydney, but they'll always remain small, and all the best talent, all the best company, and all the best resources will flow to that sort of SF Bay Area, at least if they get their homelessness problem under control.
Yeah, I feel like Australia has a, somewhat of a positive effect on what could be because of how livable it is in here in the country. Like if you had rich people or people from these mafias that you're talking about come back to Australia, they could live probably better lives in a lot of metrics in Australia, Sydney and Melbourne, etc. And start creating those little kind of isolated areas of talent where people are flying into the country to build. I mean, that would be incredible.
Starmate City, as Michael Biotech was talking about.
That's true. Have you heard of that concept?
No, that sounds fun though.
He wants to build like a city in Australia for startup founders, like get 900 people all together, and then to grow that over time.
I would get on board with that because you got to give people optionality, right? There's nothing wrong with wanting a really comfortable life and being really happy with your job and being really happy with your family time and having the balance and being able to do that. Since having a baby 5 months ago, I'm having a bit of a shift of perspective because I want to spend time with him, but I'm working like crazy hours as well. So how do you do all that? But there's no shame in that either. So giving people the optionality, which is where these hubs come into play, is central locations where the most ambitious, talented people who are rallying towards a common goal around, fundamentally changing how humanity lives, and also who are ready to sacrifice for it as well, because nothing comes without sacrifice. And I think we have too much of this survivorship bias, right? We always see the ones who succeeded, and we role model when we think, it's a straight path to success. In fact, a lot of my mentors have had horror stories about how their companies have gone under, medical device companies in the United States, for, not because the tech was bad or anything. It's just because there wasn't the right time for them. They didn't have enough money, and they were struggling with some payers model and reimbursement hurdle. But these people are viewed as incredible talent in the community. And I think here we have this sort of concept that, if you tried and you didn't make it, there you're a has-been, type of person. You tried, and that's it. We'll try and focus on the ones who succeed instead. So it's recognizing that even the ones who tried have slightly different mindset to the ones who, we have a lot of like bench warmers and backseat drivers here. It was like, they should have done this, they should have done that. It goes across everything, through the economy, the government, politics. Everybody thinks, the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? Everybody thinks they are incredibly good until they actually try. And I think there needs to be some recognition for people who do try.
Definitely. Comes with community, right? Eldin, I'm curious, as someone who recently had a child, like yourself, I'm talking to myself.
Congratulations.
No, I definitely have. I'm not close to that side of my life yet, I don't think. Anyway, how do you manage your time? That's something that like startup founders and people running companies really struggle with as it is. And then having the child makes it more complex.
Yep. My superhero is my wife.
Yeah.
I'm not going to cut it. Like I have like 100 times full respect for everything that she does. It's just incredible how she manages to do all this while still be supportive. Like my days are incredibly chaotic, and being able to be able to help support me and my dreams, and being able to help with making me feel valuable as a dad. And I try my best. Time is like pretty time. There's like time crunch time. So I'm like, okay, I'm waking up, going to work, and then going to sleep. They're already asleep type of times. And I think she's being incredibly supportive and encouraging. There's not a single time she was like, you shouldn't be doing this. And I think there's a balance too, because I recognize that she's supportive. So I will do my best to be able to be there for them as well. But I think there's no silver bullet. It's just it's incredible chaos but incredible joy to have kids. You see so much hope in their eyes, and you want it reinforced my conviction to make the world a better place. That's what it did.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think it's tough, and I'm guilty of this too. I have goals, personal goals that I've put on the back burner for a very long time to be able to push this company to where it needs to be. And conceptually, I think it's just tough. I think it's just a journey. And I think I was listening to Sahil Bloom the other day, and one of his podcasts was around success. The corner office comes with incredible sacrifice, and it's the same as you're training for climbing the Everest, right? You have to sacrifice, and very few make it to the top. And actually, there's quite a few bodies on the top of the Everest as well. So, what are you prepared to sacrifice to achieve some of these goals? And for those who are not okay with, so for those who there's different levels of sacrifice, and it's okay to be comfortable with any levels, even if you don't want to risk anything and just have a really, climb the corporate ladder and have very good work-life balance. I respect that. I think we all have different needs and desires, and it's understanding, what is important to you. It comes from internalizing it and understanding who you are as a person. If that makes you happy, go for it. For me as a person, my whole existence, from being born and my journey in Mauritius and coming here is just as doing as much humanly good as possible using science.
Yeah.
Right? It's not, a lot of people talk to me about tech, and I switch off after a few seconds. I'm like, I understand the need for better productivity tools, better video recording software, whatever. Look, we need them, right? But it's just it doesn't interest me at all.
Yeah, it reminds me of a quote from Kate Drummond, the sort of neurosurgeon at Royal Melbourne Hospital. Yeah. Basically, you can have everything, but you can't have everything all at the same time. And I think I empathize with that. I really do believe that you can have it all. For those that are listening in, and if you're an entrepreneur or you want to be an entrepreneur, you should be upfront with the person that you're dating or your partner about what life is actually going to look like. A lot of people who are in relationships, they want stability, they want family, they want this promise of success or promise of just some baseline, and you don't have that in entrepreneurship. You have the worst case scenario is that you're sleeping on the streets of San Francisco with the homeless people in the Tenderloin and you're stabbed, right? And you're addicted to fentanyl. That is the worst case scenario, and you just got to be upfront about that. But if you find that person that is willing to accept that risk and they love you for you, and they love you for your dreams and for your ambition, then now you have your relationship life in check. And as long as you find a way to I guess unwind and relax from work and switch off from work, you can still be 100% in on your company. You can still build your dreams, and then there will be times where you can take your foot off the gas a little bit and become an angel investor once you're done. So,
yeah, very very optimistic. I'd say it's more complex, right? Because it goes without saying, it's like easier said than done to, you know, put all of these things in like their own baskets, but in real life, when you're trying to navigate it all kind of just fades together. And the time that you want to spend with your partner, or that you've allocated to spend with your partner and have deep conversations about the future, end up getting, to some degree, affected by whatever else is going on in the back of your mind. At least for me.
You're right.
Right?
Yeah.
And that clouds like what you envisage the future to look like. So you sit down with your partner and say, look, reality is that the future is going to be uncertain, and it's going to be tough, and it's going to be chaotic. I can't predict what it's going to look like, whether or not you want to stick around for that. God bless you for doing so, right?
I think it's, again, understanding the concept of mimetic desires. Why do we want things? Why do we want a certain job? Why do we want a certain amount of money? Why do we want a certain house that's a certain size? Why do we want some possessions? And it's really enlightening. I was reading a lot, about the concepts of mimetic desire and in the context of how Renee explains it, and that we are inherently bound to want things other people want. And if you can identify what you want, and this is the word authenticity he uses, and the word authenticity stems from the word author, which means self. And this is one of the most incredible things you can do, because then you know who you are and what you want and what you're striving for. And every single second of your life is put towards something, and whether it's good or bad times, as long as your basic needs, which is like food, shelter, clothing, are met, the whole Maslow's hierarchy, the base of that, then you'll be happy. And I'm very grateful that, a bit of shameless plug for my wife, but we are on the same page around those desires. Is like we're relatively simple people. We're not dreaming of being, like filthy rich and having like an incredible mansion or whatsoever. As long as, our kid grows up healthy and happy, goes to a good school, and, he has a relatively good life, and we're happy with that. And I think part of that understanding is she understands that even if I lose a lot in that pursuit of diagnose or whatever startup I'm aiming for, she knows that I personally will be looking after our own basic interest that we need as a family, and as long as we're happy with those ground needs that we need, and then we'll be fine. Because I think it's misalignment of what people truly want versus what they think they want, because they see everybody else having it, right? So it's and to your point, if we're talking about relationships in general, that's your family or your friends or people who support you or your spouse, it's understanding what do they want out, how do you, who you are as a person and not who you're pretending to be.
It's so complex and philosophical, because I feel like, how do you know what you really want is a big question. And for a lot of entrepreneurs or people who play that position as entrepreneur, the way that they were brought up was fairly chaotic. Some of them have gone through fair trauma. Probably didn't even have time to process the trauma because they were always just building.
Think you're describing me right now.
Right. So, and it's kind of a weird concept that maybe we could discuss and try break it down. But like, people go through trauma, they should deal with the trauma, but instead of dealing with it, they build.
They build technology.
They build technology that changes the world, and they don't really ever deal with whatever the underlying problem was, but it can have fairly positive implications in society at the sacrifice and expense of their own happiness.
Speak for yourself. I had therapy this morning.
This is just an ongoing, thought process in my mind.
It's a hero's journey for sure, and I think trauma, and that's something I've been writing about for a while, is that we should be proud of our scars, because I think a lot of people just try to hide them too much, and whether that's physical or mental as well, and there's this saying that your track record for going through bad days is 100%. It's immaculate. You've been through every single bad days and you made through it, right? Think about that.
Yeah.
Like forever, how long you've been alive. And I think people don't give credit to themselves for going through crazy stuff and the ability to leverage those. It's called the crucible moments of leadership. I forgot who wrote and spoke about this, and I saw this on one of Sequoia's podcasts recently when I thought about it again. It said you will have across your life multiple transformative moments that will fundamentally shape your worldview about who you want to be, or how you react in that situation will fundamentally shape your worldview or who you're going to be until the next crucible moment, right? I'll give you a personal example. So I was born in Mauritius. I was born with a very, very rare disease called toxoplasmosis. So you guys familiar with toxo?
Yeah, but for those who aren't, just give a brief.
Sure. So toxo is part of the torch family. Very, very rare parasite. So torch stands for toxo, or I don't know what it is. R is rubella, C is cytomegalovirus, I think, and H is herpes. A branch of parasites that, they're pretty nasty. Sometimes you get it as adults. But when a pregnant woman gets it, the types of parasites, infectious disease that cross the placenta and can actually affect fetal growth, right? And that's why they say pregnant women avoid unwashed vegetables, unwashed lettuce, don't eat uncooked meat or cat litter and so forth. And I was one of the very fortunate and unfortunate people to be to have contracted toxo while I was still in my mother's womb. Right?
Yeah.
I say fortunate, unfortunate, because fortunate, I was born with, some brain calcification, some brain problems. I had slight developmental delays as a child. I had seizures, and I am right eye blind completely. So, I wear an eye patch sometimes for fun, and it makes no difference.
So you can't see?
No, my right eye is...
Wow.
I have some peripheral vision.
Yeah.
But the central vision, which is called the macula, I have like a giant scar on it.
So it's just black?
It's not black. It's almost as if it doesn't exist. It's so strange to explain that. As in, like, if I do this, I can't see your face.
Yeah.
But
you can see everything
and
else.
I can't see your upper body.
Can you see this?
I can sort of see your hand waving.
Yeah.
But it's not like a pitch black
it's not
hole.
clear.
It's almost like all the colors meld into this, and like you're not there. Right, it's
That's
really,
how the blind spot works. Yeah.
it's really hard to explain.
Yeah, well, you've done a good
almost like
job.
behind you doesn't really exist,
Yes.
right? It's not like it's black. It's not appearing in my consciousness.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that my brain processes it to do that way. So I'm saying, I'm fortunate I only had these. I had, it was very, very small cohort of people who were being treated for this. I knew only, like a few handful of other people, and some of them, actually most of them were like wheelchair bound.
Yeah.
They couldn't move, they couldn't talk, they had like severe problems all the time.
Wow.
So that's the fortunate, unfortunate thing is like, unfortunate I was born with it, unfortunate, I was not as severely affected. But I because of it, I spent a lot of time in hospital, and I spent a lot of time away from people, just like reading books or playing video games or watching like TV in hospital. And it really made me empathize with, healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, everybody there, because they're just trying their best, right? So I'll never forget this one. I was 12, so I lost the vision completely. So I was losing vision, but I lost the vision completely when I was around 13. And I'll never forget this day. He said, I would love to do something for you. And he was one of the best, ophthalmologists in Mauritius. And, probably he would have studied overseas to get these qualifications. It was like, based on the current technology, we can't do much. That's not to say that in 10, 20, 30, 50 years it won't exist. But as of right now, I am really sorry. And that was profound for me because I'm like, sure, you're probably one of the most gifted person on the planet, but you're still enabled by technology or advances in therapy and drugs to be able to help me. And I think that was very transformative. I was like, okay, well, technology really helps in making the world a better place. And so that was my crucible moment. I had multiple through life to get to where I am. But that was one of my crucible moments to say, I always wanted to be a pilot. And I was like, I can't be a pilot because I can't see. But, the next best thing would be to create incredible technologies in my mind, to really help people. And that's sort of where this innate desire came from. I didn't really understand it probably until a few months ago, I would say. I didn't really know what I wanted up until
How old are you?
Right now?
Yeah.
29.
See, I feel like, late 20s, you probably start to reflect more on your past rather than just build. Right? I'm only turning 27 this year, but I'm in that phase where I don't have time to think. Right, so I'll do that later.
Another crucible moment for me was I lost my dad at 18, right? Diabetes, and he had a heart attack, and it's just like this. One day he was there, the other day he wasn't there, and I was like really sad. But I remember, I'll never forget. That's another day that I'll never forget. I forget what I did this morning, but I'll never forget that day. It was, in my culture, we had to, I was in charge of the burial. I had to do everything, prepare his body, put him in the casket, carry him, dug the hole, lay him down for his last rest. And I thought that was a privilege, right? I didn't know. I went to, my wife's side of family, like a Christian funeral, Catholic funeral a few years ago, and I was like, wow, this is so different too.
From what
I've been through, oh my God.
From what you just described, a Catholic burial would be disconnected. You'd be like, well, why are you just doing that? Why are you just standing so far away from his body?
Anyways, it was very intimate, right? And I'll never forget this day. I was like, you know what? If I can make it through this day, I can do anything. This is, in my eyes, the biggest failure that I've ever been through. It's like, I blame on myself. I know there's nothing I couldn't do, but I wished I recognized the signs of him because he was complaining of shoulder pain and he was complaining of all these things like the day before. I was like, I wish I knew any better to say, look, you're diabetic, a lot of heart disease, triple bypass, should go to the emergency. But I didn't. And for me, that's when people ask me, what's my biggest failure? That's sort of what I allude to is this is my biggest failure, and there's nothing else that will top that. So my only purpose that I want to do is to do as much good as possible using science to change the world. That's just I figured out. And you're right, I only processed this maybe a few months ago because I'm like, it's been 10 years. I've never processed it. It's pretty crazy. You focus on building so much, and then you stop and you slow down. And you're like, why am I building all this?
What am I doing? What have I done?
Yeah,
that's deep, Eldin.
Anyways,
I appreciate you sharing that story.
You're welcome. That was one of my crucible moments that sort of shaped me.
I guess. I'd like to come back to Diagnose and US and Australia.
Sure.
You've been building in Melbourne, right? You're living in Melbourne, and yet you're aware of the culture and the access to capital there. What would you say are the factors that went into your decision, and what are you missing out on by not being where the action is?
No, that's a very good point. I think that's a very conscious decision as well. Part of it is my spouse is here and my child is here, and Australia is a much relatively safer place or nicer place to grow up than the States, or some parts of the States at the very least. But I have this fundamental belief that every day I meet incredible people here, every day I meet incredible scientists, technologists, and so forth. And I think that in the future, we will be leading one of the biggest revolution around, technology or whatever. Name your pick, with material sciences, quantum, biotechnology. We've got so much going on at the same time, but we will be part of, the leaders doing this. And it will only start if we are investing into this community. So I'm super passionate about, I still maintain the US connections, and in fact I learn a lot from them. I have mentors. A lot of our advisors are actually 90% of our investors and advisors are from the US, but we're always learning from them to improve the community here, drive the talent. And from a company perspective, I was at CDL last year in Seattle. CDL, for those who don't know, Creative Destruction Lab, one of the biggest, program in the world for the most ambitious founders working on science that will change the world. And I was saying, look, I think Australia is incredible because we've got the talent, and talent is not as expensive as Bay Area. I had a friend who's building a, computational biology company similar to us, and he was saying one of his early software hires had to be, $200K plus benefits plus share option, because they were based in Mountain View, right, where Facebook is, and where you have all these other giants. You have Illumina as well, and he was like, it's incredible. They expect, that's why you need to raise such big seed and Series A rounds, because talent costs so much. And here you have people who are hungry, they're incredibly hungry to make a change. Then, they don't need as much money relatively, because cost of living is a lot better here than San Francisco, obviously. And also we have the R&D tax incentives that really help recycle for research and development companies. It's just we're missing that funding and resource, and really aggressive funding towards R&D, because Australia, you have Israel, Japan, South Korea, US at the top of percentage R&D to GDP, and Australia's towards the bottom. So we have all these great mechanism and talent and hungry people in place, but not enough investment. And that's just it infuriates me. But I'm I want to be part of this solution. So I made this conscious choice, and I spent a lot of time in the US. Don't get me wrong. Last year I spent probably in total 4 months in the US. If not more, across Texas, Penn, Bay Area, Seattle, but every time I come here, you're coming up from a high, but I come with this mentality that we can build a community here, and I'm super excited to be part of that.
That's incredible. So you mentioned a lot of your investors are based in the US.
Yeah.
What do they think about your decision to consciously live in Australia?
So is your company based out of the US? Is it a Delaware C Corp, or is it an Australian company?
No, we're transitioning at the moment, but it's a PTY Ltd, but we're transitioning at the moment to a Delaware C Corp. That's a very interesting question. I think fundamentally I've been the motor behind Diagnose to be able to grow the company to where we are. We've completed clinical studies, 70 patients. We've got 8 publications peer reviewed that are going to come out this year. We've got a team of 11 growing from the 4 co-founders, 8 patent filings, on which I'm a co-author on 4 of them, and they respect that. They know that I can hustle and make it work, and especially in tight funding environment. A few of them actually came out saying they're super, because one of them actually built a biomarker company, right? And he knows what the cost of a PC2 lab, and that's what he paid 10 years ago. It's probably a lot more now. Yeah. And he knows what the cost of talent is and the cost of a lab is and all of that. And he was super surprised when I break down, I give him the income statement. He's like, wow, you only spent this money. And I was like, wait, we're going to get 43% back. And it's like, wow, that's incredible. And he came out saying, okay, well, especially in these tight funding times, our burn rate is still relatively low compared to US companies. And we don't have to make that decision on okay, layoffs, on downsizing as much, we can survive through the winter up until we make enough progress to be able to get to the next stage of investment. And I think it plays really well for research. I think it'll become very difficult when we're commercial stage though, and we're gearing up to launch a few product in the research market, and we will have to have a sales team in the US. There's no denying that. There's no denying that. You can't have your customers be very far away from you. You need to build trust, you need to build credibility, you need to build respect. And even if you're going for like bigger VC funding as well, we will need to have a physical presence in the US, which is why we're transitioning to a Delaware C Corp. But I think, R&D, incredible place.
Yeah. Is there a way that you can leverage the R&D tax incentive that is in Australia and the talent in Australia while also leveraging the funding environment from the US as well? Can you have the best of both worlds?
There's actually companies that do that. They bring talent, like US companies that come to Australia to do a clinical work. There's, I'm not going to name drop, but a very famous Stanford alumni that I respect a lot, built one of the biggest up-and-coming neuromodulation companies, using, those who don't know, using electrical impulses to affect how your nerve works, to modulate how you feel pain. A lot of his early R&D was done in the US, yes, but when it came to clinical trial, they offloaded everything to Newcastle in Sydney and did it here.
So did they establish a new entity to do that?
I'm not sure of the specifics, but they hired people on the ground here. I think they probably would have done like a subsidiary company. They had people on the ground. They had a whole clinical team. They had everybody that did the clinical trial, and then shipped everything back to the US. And I have a lot of people, some of them from the Stanford community, asking me, "Wow, we've been trying to get in touch." One of my friends, he's working on this CAR T cell therapy. I've put him in touch with some of the researchers at Peter Mac here. Nice. And they are wanting to leverage that, especially in MedTech, because cost of capital is getting very, very expensive with the interest rates. And
thanks, Jerome.
Yes, and they are trying to make the most of what they have. So that sort of answers your question on how to do it. But ultimately, their holding company will go back to the US, and that's where management, founding team is based and everything.
So you need to have a P2I Ltd to claim the R&D tax incentive, but you can have a US holding
This is
company.
not financial advice. I have no idea.
Again, for the audience, it's not financial advice. Speak to a trusted financial advisor.
I have no idea. But what I know is people are increasingly recognizing the benefits of doing R&D here.
Yeah. For sure. Wow.
Absolutely. Well, I'd love to also get more into the problem in the tech.
Sure.
So you're building Diagnose.
Yep.
There's a lot of patients that have chronic rhinosinusitis, I believe it's pronounced.
Yep.
Tell us about that, and tell us about what the actual technology is that you're building that you think is going to address this problem.
Sure. And we've expanded a bit. Our current clinical cohort includes asthma and COPD, so lung disorders as well. But fundamentally, at Diagnose, we believe that when patients undergo, patient falls sick and chronic disease treatment and management, they undergo the whole treatment paradigm, there's a step missing, right? Right now, there's 3 or 4 steps. Let's think about it together, right? So let's say somebody has asthma, severe asthma, and they failed all treatments, and they come back to you as a doctor, and you think, okay, what are the main questions you will ask to think whether, to address this treatment failure? What's the first question you guys think we should ask?
How many times do you use your puffer?
Yeah, well, not being specific to the treatment with asthma, but okay, how many times have you used, is it compliance? Have you used the drug properly? I would say the first question is this the right diagnosis? Do you really have asthma, or did we diagnose you with something wrong and then we're giving you the wrong treatment the first time, right? So do you have the right diagnosis?
Yep.
Are we giving you the right drug for that diagnosis? Are we giving you the right dose of that drug for that diagnosis? On the spectrum, are you in the more severe side and we need to give you a higher dose to control it? And are you compliant? Are you taking it? Right? Still with me so far?
Yeah.
We think fundamentally there's a step that's missing between 1 and 2, is asthma as an example, or COPD, which is a type of lung disorder, even chronic sinusitis, they're not singular disease entities. Current research points toward that. Everybody's biology is different. We have different types of underlying causes that drive the inflammation. And you know that they are different because you have so many drugs with different mechanisms of action, right? They all target, different things. In the severe asthma space, we have, new drug class called biologics, different to your Panadol. You ingest small molecules. They're, protein-based, and there's multiple receptors, right? Some of them bind to what you call IL-4, IL-13, the IL-4 receptor. Some is the IL-5, which are like different. Put it blankly, different types of biological inflammatory markers that you have inside your body, and we think the step that is missing here is once you have the right diagnosis, you need to understand within that diagnosis, what is the biological makeup of my patient and what is the drug that most likely corresponds with that biological makeup. Because doctors have like 10, 20 different choices, and frankly, you'll ask them, they don't know what to pick. Sometimes it's based on access. In the US, it's based on what the insurance is covering, and it's based on like what's popular, what's like they've heard about. And a lot of my friends, most of our investors are physicians and surgeons, and they'll be saying, it feels like you're being in a room, it's like completely dark. Somebody says, throw a dart at the dartboard, and you throw something, you're not even sure if the dartboard is there in the first place, right? You actually have no clue of which one of these targets will work. So our concept as diagnosis, if you, at step number 2, if you figure out what the patient's biology is, not only can you figure out what are the existing treatments and you can match them to that therapy, or if there's none of the existing treatments that match that specific biology, then you can park that patient to a clinical trial to do drug discovery and develop a new treatment for them. And this is what we think is going to lead into precision medicine. So what the technology is, it takes a tiny bit of nasal secretion, nasal fluid from one of the entrances leading to your sinuses. And what we do is we profile, at the moment in R&D, we're profiling hundreds and hundreds of protein signatures. We've looked at RNA and DNA as well, and we look at the whole modality of omics. And then the next step here, we've identified some signatures that correspond with what are, how these patients will respond to this therapy, or this patient will respond to this therapy. And then the next step is to roll this out into, a full package that they can use in a clinical practice.
Interesting.
So you're personalizing the characterizing of the pathophysiology of these patients.
Correct.
And then you're matching it with the drug.
Correct, because you otherwise you're flying blind. You don't know what you're gonna, and for these patients with severe asthma, they are at risk of hospitalization, they are at risk of death, and some of these treatments have incredible side effects as well. And what you want to do is figure out up front which one is going to work, put them on that. You save cost, patient outcome, everybody's happy. If it doesn't exist, now you're opening a whole window into drug development and drug discovery, which is what I mentioned before. We're looking to the drug discovery side, because now we're sitting on a bank of data, and we have the data we're continuously generating. Like, what do we do with this? And there's very, very successful examples. That one that's making the news recently in biotech is called Alto Neurosciences. They're listing for, I think, $500 million in the United States, and they have this similar approach: is biomarker-driven drug development. Is you identify your patient subset, the ones who will respond, give them the drug, the ones who don't, find something that works for them.
That's an interesting approach. I never really thought of it like that. I suppose the cost to scale something like that would be a big limitation.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, it's pretty crazy. Like, that's how I said
because if you're comparing to traditional diagnosis through something, I don't know, as simple as a blood test, that even costs money to analyze. But what you're considering is far more personalized. So the resources from the actual, physical labor required to process, and then the costs associated with that. How have you gone about, thinking about that?
Yeah. Do you mean cost for development or cost for rolling out commercially?
Even rolling out commercial.
Which one though? Pick one.
Yeah, the second.
So, cost to rolling out commercially, there's specific models around this that you can work through, because there's payers in the United States. They're looking at what you can have what you call value-based model, which is like capitated models.
Yep.
They call it value-based care, you call them, and there's specific quotas. You'd put them on specific patients. So the providers who tend, it's an agreement where the providers are the payers as well. Sometimes like Kaiser Permanente, they are incentivized to reduce the cost spend per patient, right? And that trickles down to their own P&L, and the company itself becomes profitable. So in that context, they are more amenable to like preventative or personalized medicine, precision medicine type of approaches. But even your fee-for-service payers, they would rather prescribe something that they know would work.
Yeah.
Because these drugs aren't cheap, right? Some of these biologics are like $30,000 per patient per year, and the test would be a fraction of that.
True.
So that's where the value proposition sort of come. On the flip side, the development side is an incredible cost. And like I said, I thought this would be like the easiest company to build, like the simplest technology for antibiotic resistance. We became like a precision medicine company, and like the diagnostic cost is, to run the clinical trials, we're always running clinical studies and everything. It's like pretty expensive. And now we're transitioning to drug discovery and drug development. It's like even more expensive. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. And this is not really what I signed up for, but it's enjoyable. I'm enjoying the journey and learning along the way.
So that's fantastic.
I suppose once you demonstrate the health economics of the product, in the same way that we deal with microbiology, with if you have an infection, we might give you an empiric antibiotic therapy, but we usually take a sample, figure out what the bacterium is, what it's susceptible for, and then give you an antibiotic that's specific for that. Human biology is often much more diverse, and the pathophysiologies are very different from each other, even to bacterias. So you can imagine that every time someone gets diagnosed with asthma, that's the initial step. That's like the empiric therapy. We'll give you a puffer, but here's a sample. We want you to send. We're going to send this to the pathology lab. We're going to get your profile. We're going to make sure this drug works. Maybe there's a better drug. Instead of giving you, this biologic, we'll give you this one. It would actually save money from the taxpayer.
Correct, 100%. And it's not just that side as well. We've seen that there's a lot of providers that aren't willing to prescribe these therapies if they're unsure if it's going to work for their patient as well, right? So we had a lot of interest from some pharmaceutical companies about, okay, well, you can actually help make the case that this would be beneficial for the patients, or in really, crazy healthcare systems with long wait lists like the NHS in the UK, you can actually fast track market access and help these patients get on these life-saving drugs, because when it works, it's incredible. It's life-changing. I have a friend who had atopic dermatitis, which is really severe eczema to the point where it's like debilitating, had to bandage himself. And when he went on the biologics, it's just all gone. It's like, I'm living life again. And what we really want to help, essentially what we are doing at Diagnosis is want to make sure that the right people who will benefit from these drugs, no matter which one of the biology is, will have access to that drug and change their life. And it's all about our patients as well, which we, being a physician sort of led company. 3 of my 4 co-founders are surgeons, so we are very passionate about this.
Yeah. Fascinating. We'll get to that sort of co-founder dynamic as well. It's also like I was reading just in medical school some of the weird guidelines that we have to be able to access like a biologic therapy, and it's like, do this first, and then if it doesn't work, then do this, and if it doesn't work, then do that, and then only then will we approve you for having government support for this biologic. Whereas you can skip all that. You can know, if you have enough data, if the patient's going to respond to current drugs that are prescribed for everyone as a standard, and target them sooner, potentially get them down below a certain disease state where they can live a healthy life. Or if you waited, you would have gotten really bad, and potentially you would have had to have more taxpayer costs. So it's
100% incredible insight. And this is also something we're looking at is you can prevent progression of these diseases into more severe sort of states if you find them early, and instead of trialing and messing around with all these different drugs, you give them the biologic drug straight away. And there's incredible patient outcomes that could be derived from this, and it all starts with being able to understand the molecular mechanisms that is driving the disease states. And you know, a lot of the parties who are working on this sort of problem, it's one of the biggest problems in the asthma space right now. A lot of people recognize the benefit of that. So we sort of evolved from, you know, like I was saying, the antimicrobial piece where we started off and saying, okay, the technology we had to differentiate between those was profiling your immune system to determine, because, you know, speaking a bit chemistry, you have for viral infections, you have more interferon base. For bacteria, you have more, you know, neutrophilic inflammation, more, you know, antimicrobial peptides, alpha defensin, beta defensins. And having the similar technology, we then pivoted that into this space where we really see the need for improving patient access to biologic and making sure the ones that really, really need it, that will benefit from it, access it sooner.
Man, the future's going to be wild. There's so many changes happening right now in just every single kind of industry, tech, healthcare, biotech. It's just in 5 or 10 years' time, it's going to be unrecognizable as it was maybe 20 years ago. Eldin, you mentioned a lot of your, you know, co-founders or co-founding team are clinicians.
Sure.
What's that dynamic like?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. We get along really, really well, and they're really. I'm really grateful. They're all different personalities as well. We have, you know, some that are more academic, and some that are more junior, and some of them are, you know, more industry. That do a lot more industry work and more consulting work with you know, giant pharma and medical device companies, and it's that meld of diverse opinions that sort of lead us to where we are right now. And I'm really appreciative. We meet religiously, like once or twice, you know, every week, just to discuss like the matters that we need to discuss, and then if there's anything important in between, just like bounce texts or like calls. And it's nice to see. It's a tough environment in general just to build any company, but there's always that mutual respect of we're all professionals into what we're trying to do, and we're also very committed, motivated. We've all put significant money into the company to get it going as well, and we all have a seat at the table to be able to say what we think, and then you know, it's healthy debates about where we need to go.
Brilliant. And
for me, I'm grateful they give me this level of trust, because, you know, I'm relatively young, and some of them, 2 of them are actually twice my age. So it's that ability to respect that I will do a lot of work, and then I will create a coherent version of you know, a distilled version of where we think, you know, the future is heading, and then we'll discuss, and then we'll agree and make a decision. It's never my decision alone, but they respect the work that goes into preparing for that presentation and making those decisions at the very least.
Nice.
I suppose you've also taken like a relatively non-traditional path into this industry.
Yeah.
For the audience, like break down like what's your background? What do you think your core strengths are?
Sure.
And what would your recommendation be to the youth of today that want to, you know, follow in your footsteps, so they want to solve a problem in biotech?
Yeah.
How do they get from like a student to someone with the requisite competencies and networks and understanding of the problem space to be able to actually innovate in that problem?
Sure. Oh, that's a packed question, my friend. So let's start. So background in engineering. I get confused for clinician a lot of the time. I spend a lot of time with clinicians. That's probably why. I worked with, like I said before, a few medical device early stage startups, orthopedics. One of my key strengths is I can understand basic science and work things through from first principles. which I think, like you said before, is one of the key attributes that we find a lot of people have in the US, in the Bay Area. They think about from everything, I think, from first principle. If it's a marketing problem, I'll think about it from first principles and make my way up. So that's sort of my key strength. My second key strength is I'm pretty personable and I'm pretty easygoing and I'm easy to make friends. And that's really my job description. If you look at my job description, is make friends everywhere, because once you do that, you're able to have leverage into, bigger opportunities, collaborations and stuff like that. And, it's not a one-way sort of situation. You need to be able to connect dots and be able to help them as well. And it is all like long-term relationships that, I really cherish, and I really hope that everybody that I'm helping it really works out for them too. So that's a bit about my skill set. So understand science, work from first principle, really good at making friends. For getting to biotech and medtech, I've been thinking about this lately. If I did something slightly differently, what would it be? And I think it would be find an up and coming company that's growing like super fast, but it's not like a giant organization, and maybe join it for like a year at the very least, or even 2 years, and learn from them how they do things and build your network. Because if I didn't have my co-founders who are, twice my age by experience and contacts and networks and everything, it would be incredibly tough to be building in this space. Because ironically, tech, I've heard about this, from one of the Sam Altman podcasts recently. Is like tech is tracking older. A lot of the companies going through YC are like slightly becoming older and older, but biotech naturally tracks older. You will struggle to find really young founders in biotech that are successful as well, because a lot of the things you need to do, deal making with pharma, deal making with medtech, raising based on credibility and not as much traction, a lot of those things come with time and pedigree, which as a young founder you might not have had. And for me, I've been leveraging, a lot of my own background, which, some people come to respect, but then also my co-founders who are, literal experts in this field. And I think that's one of the unfair advantages that more experienced founders have in biotech. It all comes down to this argument of, it's not you, it's them. Yeah. Right? You could be absolutely great at what you do, but it would be, I'm sorry, it's not you, they're better. Right? So,
yeah, I think that's, fairly specific as well for like the biotech and medtech space. Yeah. Because it's often a space that's funded based on intellectual property. And often to have that, you need the scientific expertise to procure the data to get there.
I mean, like, you could be the most rando person out there and have incredible in tech and have incredible year-on-year growth, incredible ARR. Every investor is going to talk to you. Yeah, that's true. Because of, like, at least by curiosity, right? Oh, what is this kid doing right? Yeah. You could be like a 16-year-old with like incredible metrics, or like a 12-year-old with incredible metrics. So we're like, wait a minute, we'll take this meeting. What is happening there? What am I missing? But in biotech, it's slightly more different. There's a nuance there. Is that you need to be funded on your ambition, the IP, who you are as a person, your ability to execute and create that vision, and also your ability to influence the end parties, whether that's the hospital policymakers, whether that's the payers, whether that's the clinicians, whether that's acquirers, whether that's investors, and so forth. And if I wasn't so blessed to have my co-founders, I think I would have spent time at an up-and-coming biotech or medtech company that is growing pretty fast, post-Series A maybe, and then learn as much as I can, make as, many friends as I can.
Big recommendation that I've received is exactly that. Like, there's almost two pathways that people follow. It's the, do a PhD, then become a postdoc, then go work at Big Pharma, and then leverage the credibility and contacts from all of that to start a biotech company. And that would be almost like the traditional approach, and then get bought by one of the big players. Whereas the more entrepreneurial approach would be, you don't necessarily need to have that scientific pedigree. Just go work at a biotech startup and or at least like a biotech scale up, and see how they do things, learn from them, and then leverage the contacts from that to start something yourself. And then maybe recruit the scientific pedigree that you need, rather than getting yourself to be that technically competent.
I suppose the question is, how do you join an early stage accelerating biotech company without the right pedigree, without the experience that they need? So like, take yourself, for example, right? Like, medical student, at what point and what value would someone like yourself bring? Like, because obviously you're awesome at like executing on like, the actual logistics side of a company, but where does what do they need? Do they just need experimentalists? Do they just need, people who have PhDs? Like, what are they looking for?
I think, like, for me at least, like, to answer that question, you should think about who are they, right? What are their challenges? And then position yourself as the solution to a challenge. Not so much say, oh, I'm going to be an intern. I want to learn like how to pipette because they have a PhD grad from MIT to do that. But to say, hey, I'm not even, I've got enough requisite knowledge because I'm a medical student or because I studied finance or whatever. I'm going to take this part of your business and I'm going to handle it for you, or I'm going to make it better. I just want you to give me a chance. And if I go well after 6 months, you can pay me, and I'm gonna learn on the job and be very clear with your ambitions and what you hope to do after. Maybe that's a solution.
Potentially, that's a hard one. I never thought about this because I've, as far as I can remember, I've been working in really small startups, and I'm sort of been headhunted from place to place. That's a tough one.
Definitely. But I think your approach can work, Ben. It's just a matter of selling yourself the right way.
I actually have an answer now.
Sure.
And I actually saw a video interview with Barack Obama about this, and he was saying, people were asking me, okay, well, as the president, previous president of the United States, when you picking your staff and talent, what stands out, right? What do you look for? And his answer, which I've been inherently doing this, and didn't really put it to words so eloquently, but he was saying, you get people that get shit done. You identify those people that can actually get stuff done and that will roll up their sleeves and do things. And, whatever, no matter what problem you're having, if it's like a nuclear crisis of like, or the bathroom is clogged or whatever, they'll be like, you know what, let me take care of that for you. And he was saying amongst everything that he, for whatever position he hires, this is one of the biggest skill that you could have. And if you can leverage that as your skill, you'll be known for that person that gets stuff done. You're in an incredible position to be able to thrive in any of the environment that you're at. And I have the example. I'll send you the YouTube link actually, and for people who are listening as well. I think it was a Google sort of webinar. They were talking about, I'll just create a hypothetical, sort of scenario about what I can piece together. But it was a tech company that were working on some sort of, not tech, it was a hardware company because they had scientists and engineers working on some experiments. And one of the people they hired as operations manager was somebody who actually was from an ex-convict background. And when she joined, she was like, look, I'm really sorry about how my decisions that led up to this, but I'm ready to turn this around. Every single thing that this company needs to do, I will get it done. And he said, there was like times where experiments would go right, and machines, instruments would break, and you'd be like, what the hell, we're going to wait for like a few weeks for shipping. She would drive out like interstate for like 3 hours overnight, pick the stuff up, come back in the morning and get stuff running. And he said when they got acquired, right, he was the CEO, and they got acquired, and they were looking at, the new company that acquired them was looking at, potential staff layoffs because they were too, staff heavy, and they didn't need many people in the new organization. And they were looking at all these scientists like, okay, we'll keep them. And like, oh, who's this operation person? We don't need that person. The CEO is like, you take that person out, the whole company falls apart. the whole company falls apart, because that person with the ability to get stuff done is the whole reason we are where we are.
That's it.
Anyways, that's a long story about, you know, and I think
It's very topical, right?
yeah, I think it's a Google. I don't know. I'll look it up, but I think it's a Google. It's about the A method for hiring by Google, and I think that's where it comes up from. Usually, I forgot.
It's like if you position yourself as an action-oriented person with high learning velocity that is willing to just roll up your sleeves and do the dirty work, and you're willing to learn, then I think a lot of people will be willing to take a chance.
Yeah, correct. Not many people want to do that.
Or at least you'll find
some, especially
you'll
like
find
a
the right
biotech
team,
scale up rather than like an established biotech company that, you know, is hiring based on pedigree alone. Yeah. So Eldin, it's been a fascinating journey with you on the podcast. I'll leave you with one more question.
Sure.
Which is,
that's a great question. That's a really, really great question. I haven't thought about this ever. Wow.
Take your time.
Fundamentally, it's still who I believe that the future, a lot of the problems that we face, it's even on my LinkedIn profile actually, the problems that we face as a society requires people to come together and build with atoms instead of bytes, right? Because we're all into the software age, internet, blah, blah, blah. And for me, I want to be remembered as somebody who spearheaded these initiatives, who built incredible initiatives to help people come together to solve these big problems. Because problems like food, feeding, you know, billions of people, shelter, transport, housing crisis, climate problems, requires a lot of rallying people around these hard problems and looking away from potentially potentially very lucrative problems monetarily that don't have as much humanitarian benefit. And if I had to be remembered by something, it was like this guy who just showed up to try and change the course of how humanity faces some of these problems. It doesn't necessarily need to be healthcare. I'm in healthcare right now and I'm enjoying it, and it's probably because of my past and my experience so far and the crucibles moments in my life. But fundamentally, it's just about doing as much as humanly good as possible, and that's what I'd like to be remembered for.
Build with atoms, not bytes.
There we go.
That's it. Eldin, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks you for having me.
If you like this studio, you like this podcast and the space that we're in, or if you're seeking a dynamic and collaborative environment to fuel your success, don't miss out on Melbourne Connect Co-working. They are now offering an incredible 25% discount on 12-month memberships when you quote ambition in your inquiry. Follow the links in the description to learn more.